What's up guys, James here with Fun Fact of the Day. Hope you guys are having a great day, learning lots, and getting stuff done. Today, the question is, why do we work Monday through Friday? Why not Tuesday through Sunday, or, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Monday? Who knows? But fortunately, you all have me to tell you exactly why. So, buckle up and let's get into it. First, let's start with why there are 7 days in a week at all. Well, it can all date back to the ancient Babylonians about 4,000 years ago. You see, they believed at the time that there were 7 planets in the solar system, and those had serious meaning to them. They had a lot of energies and things associated with those planets. So, it was so important that they started planning their time around it, and that kind of became a 7-day week, just generically for counting time. Now, this over time spread to places like Egypt and eventually Greece and ancient Rome. And by about 250 BC, the 7-day week was pretty much in place in all Western societies. This was of course the case for quite a while until even now it's a 7-day week, and most of that time people were actually working all 7 of those days, and they were working the entire day because that's how the world used to be. The one exception to this, of course, was people taking off Sundays for religious purposes, because most of the Western world believed in Christianity, and Sunday is a sacred day in that religion that you're supposed to rest during. So then the question remains, when did we start taking off Saturday as well? It all started back in 19th century England, when factory workers usually would get Sunday off for church, and as the devout Christians that they were, they would decide to drink way too many glasses of Jesus blood until they were hungover for the next week. This usually caused them to miss most of work on Monday, so then the question is, why isn't our weekend Sunday and Monday as opposed to Sunday and Saturday like it is now? Well, those companies didn't really like the idea of people showing up to work hungover ever, and for some reason they were very attached to Monday, so they compromised with the workers by giving them half of Saturday off so they could get drunk on Saturday, go to church on Sunday and pray that their hangover is cured, and then by the time Monday rolled around they'd be ready to go for work. But of course, that's not a full Saturday. So when did we actually start getting all of Saturday off? Well, once upon a time, there was a New England mill, and they had a lot of Jewish workers and a lot of Christian workers, and the Jewish workers believed that Saturday was their day of rest, so they would take Saturday off and work Sunday. But being that most of the population was predominantly Christian, they decided to get a head start on being offended by every little thing, and made a big fuss about people working on Sundays. So, as all great companies do, they decided to settle in court and just gave everybody both days off instead of dealing with the hassle. This slowly became the standard over time, but not so much until the 1920s. You see, this wasn't exactly an easy transition because at the time, most companies believed that if they ever let one of their employees not work for a single minute, they would spend the entire time getting trashed and then they would be a really bad worker the next day. And they were right at the time, because people on average were working between 14 and 16 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, starting from about the time that they were able to go to middle school. So as you can imagine, they liked to drink on their few minutes off, and they drank a lot. This is actually what prompted Prohibition initially, and because it was so widespread and such a big problem, Prohibition initially was a very widely respected idea, and most people actually supported it until they realized that they couldn't get drunk on their days off after it passed. But I digress, back to the main point at hand. So, when did we stop working these 10 million hour work weeks and start getting Saturday and Sunday off consistently? Well, we can all thank Ford Motor Company in 1926, when they instituted the first ever 40-hour, 5-day work week that you and I both love to hate on. Now, before you go praising Ford, you should know that they didn't just do this because it was a nice thing to do and they just loved their employees and having them never work. They did it because it was going to make them more money, and this money was coming through 2 extremely creative ways. The first of which was that these workers were actually more productive in a shorter work week, even though they were literally now working half as many hours Ford continued to pay them their old wages and actually gave them a slight raise. So they were making more than 2.5 times per hour what they were used to. What this meant was that they were much more likely to show up excited to work and kill it on their few days in because they had so much time off. They were basically just very grateful for this very short work week, and they were able to focus all 40 hours. And so his productivity actually went up, even though everybody in the company was working for half as much time. Now, the second way that this made him more money was much more creative, and it was a much more long-term solution. Imagine you were working, and one day, half of your hours were cut, but you still get paid the same amount of money. You'd have a ton of free time, right? And what would you do with that free time? You'd probably go shopping, go to the mall, go to the bars, maybe go to that country in the park picnic that you always talked about going to but never actually did and probably still won't go to. But the key thing with all of those things that you need to do is drive a car. And he knew that if more people had more leisure time and the same amount of money, they would find more and more reasons to go out and buy a car. You gotta remember, this was in the very early days of cars when not a lot of people had them. So he was creating, slowly over time, an extremely large car market, which ended up being the largest car market in the world. You might say that he paved the way for us to be a very car-dependent society. Alright, now, so the final question remains, how did this policy spread to all the other companies? Well, they had every single employee in the world lining up at their doorstep, good, bad, top-tier engineers, wanting to work for Ford because they were the only company that got time off, and they got paid way more than everybody else. So, of course, the only option for all these other companies was to either endure tons and tons and tons of worker strikes or do the exact same thing. And they decided to do the exact same thing, which is why we now, even to this day, have a 5-day, 40-hour work week. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see even more interesting videos that are probably even better than this one, click the link right here. I'll have a whole playlist of them just for you. And like and subscribe. It really, really helps the channel out, and it only takes you 1 second to do. So, I thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow.